Welcome everybody to another episode of The Land of Saint and Sinners with me, your host today, Richie Taylor, and the wonderful and the amazing
Jojo.
So glad you've taken the time to tune in. Don't forget to follow us on all the social media platforms, X, TikTok, and of course subscribe right here on YouTube. Well, today's episode, we put a teaser out last night and we asked the question, if you put into any search engines who's the most powerful and influential doctor in the world, guess who comes up? Bill Gates, would you believe it? Not even medically trained. We're going to look at him a little bit later in a bit more depth. But our discussion today is to do with the W.H.O. because there's some things happening in July that you need to know about because the mainstream media don't seem keen on covering it. Clark, let's begin by talking about who is the W.H.O.
So the WHO is the World Health Organization and it's part of the United Nations. And they are there to oversee the global health of the world, and they look out for any sort of like forthcoming illnesses, diseases, pandemics. They get funding from all the members of the United Nations, who then distribute the money and the funding to ensure that there's equality of health around the world.
And the WHO, Jojo, was made up, I think, the last count was 196, but it's gone down now, isn't it?
194, we've lost 2, and the 2 are Argentina and the USA. They have withdrawn from being part of the WHO.
Donald Trump signed that executive order with a whole range of executive orders on his first day in office, actually, in the Oval Office. And what were his reasons behind pulling out?
So Argentina and USA have pulled out. So Trump decided to say goodbye, as did Argentina. And obviously the rationale was in regards to how the pandemic was handled and mismanaged. So that's why Trump decided to pull out.
And they were also spending, I think, in the region of £950 million, whilst us UK taxpayers were contributing we still are, £310 million to the WHO, which is an astronomical amount, given the fact that our country is up the Swanee when it comes to our national debt, and also the poverty that we've seen more recently since Labour came into power. Clark, talking about the WHO, it's not just these member states, because there's private investors as well, isn't there?
No, I was quite shocked actually when you look at it, and they were actually putting out almost like a business prospectus as you would for a massive conglomerate PLC. But there are a lot of other organisations, some charitable organisations that do contribute to it, and you can't escape the fact that one of the biggest contributors, in more ways than one, is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So they are, I think, the second largest contributor to this. But third.
Germany. So we did have USA, but now USA pulled out. It was obviously now Germany's going to be the top. So
and I think when you look as well, it's the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Then you've got Gavi, which is the Global Alliance for Vaccinations and Immunizations. And the biggest funder of that is also the Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation. So when you actually look at who's funding it, yes, there are other organisations, not countries, that are funding it. There are private investors as well. And
some of the top brass is actually within the Gates Foundation, actually. They're on astronomical salaries. I mean, Chris Elias, who's the CEO, he's on about $250,000 plus expenses a year, dollars, and there's 5 of them altogether, and they're on like big salaries, huge salaries. And really, what we're asking the question today really is, what is the WHO's intentions? What are they there for? Because they're part of the UN, we know, but they say that they're a separate body, they have autonomy from the UN, but we know it's all interconnected, don't we? And the idea, we've seen it through the last pandemic, where lockdowns were imposed, and it gives them the sovereign power over nations such as ours, and we were complicit in that when we locked our country down, and the damage that it caused to so many people and to businesses alike, and we're still paying the debt of the $400 billion we spent. There's this treaty that's been put together. It started under Boris Johnson. It's still continuing now, which the reason why we wanted to come on talk about this, because it's very important you listen, because by the 19th of July, there's a deadline, Jojo, isn't there? What's that deadline about?
The treaty on the 19th of July is basically giving full power to the WHO.
Yeah.
And that full power to the WHO includes our movements, and it includes vaccines. And, there are counterclaims to that, aren't there?
There are. Some will say that there is no sovereign argument here, that it's just an advisory and governments no matter what nation can decide whether they apply them or not. But I think one of the interesting things that we picked up during our research on this is the way that the treaty has been worded, and it's gone from may have, the legalese bit of, let's say, you may impose this, into you should impose this. And there's quite a discernible difference in that, in terms of an obligation or a choice.
Yeah, it's quite nuanced as well, because this is the first time in 75 years that a treaty of this kind historically has ever been put in place. So this is quite historical, and yet it's not on mainstream media. We had to do our research on this last night to find some of the details and information, to find out who's involved in this. And of course, we came to a lot of different conclusions in our investigation, although we could have gone a lot deeper, I know, but time was running out, it was getting late and we were tired. But the truth is that the WHO and the member states are part of, as we've discussed in previous episodes, the global agenda, and it's to control people's health. And in controlling their health, they control the masses. By controlling the masses, they can then impose vaccine mandates, as you mentioned, lockdowns imposed upon us. But the UK government, Keir Starmer, who can't lie straight in bed, would argue that, no, we have our own sovereignty. We decide about lockdowns and vaccine mandates and things like that.
The Telegraph echoed that, didn't it? It basically said
the Guardian, the Telegraph, they all said that, and they think it's a conspiracy theory and all that kind of stuff. But in reality, because of our past experience with the WHO, I don't trust a single word the government says, Jojo.
No, I don't. I think, when you are watching, again, with the lockdown, we were all watching our loved ones die, or people were being taken to hospital, or a complete lockdown. We had the government dancing around doing what they wanted to do. If they are going to be leading by example, I do not listen to a word they say anymore, because there is no trust. We have lost trust with Boris Johnson. We've now lost trust with Keir Starmer. We actually voted, or people have voted him in, with a belief system that he was actually going to deliver to the people. He has not delivered to the people. So if a word comes out of his mouth, like you said before, if he said this is water, you'd have to put your finger in and double check it, because I don't believe a word that comes out of his mouth. And now if he's now working with the WHO, and then obviously some people are saying one thing, another people are, and he's saying another, who do you trust?
I think it's very hard to trust anyone when it comes to all of this. I think we've touched on it in previous episodes as well. There's the digital passports. Now, to have these mandates that's gone through, and to look at the way that the process they've done this, they've done it by a secret process. I think it's even called the secret mandate, or where they put through the United Nations the proposal, and if no one raises an objection to it, it gets put through. It then gets accepted, and then we'll go on for full ratification at a later date, which is going to be that date in July that we talked about. So I think that they've pushed it through in order to impose what they're talking about, which will be restrictions on the ability to turn around to countries and say open and close borders. And I think we've touched on this before. It doesn't necessarily mean about allowing people in. It also means, doesn't it, allowing people out.
So you can't go on holiday, by the way, right?
Yeah.
Just to let you know.
Yeah. So
then does that not incorporate, and I know that it is not within that, but does it not incorporate then our carbon, sort of footprints? Because actually we're on a bigger picture here. So we've got this section, which we're now kind of putting through on the July the 19th, but then we've got the other side, with, Ed Miliband sort of saying, well, we need to do this net zero, blah, blah, blah. But if you look at the whole picture, it's actually quite frightening. And
how do they actually control you? How do they actually track to make sure who's going in? What is it that they want? What is it that Tony Blair's pushing for? Digital ID.
I think it's important to note that the date we mentioned, 19th of July, and what is the treaty? You need to know what the treaty is about. What is the treaty? What's the wording they're using, Clark?
It's pandemic preparedness.
That's the word. It's a bit of a tongue twister, and we've had outtakes of this because I've tried saying it 3 times. I wouldn't get it out. But yeah, it's them telling us how we should prepare for any future pandemics, because they're global. And if you don't get rid of the virus or whatever they put out there, because we know that, I believe that it was a man-made virus in China.
Of course it was.
And that's why the reason why Trump pulled out, because he has no trust in China whatsoever, and I don't blame him, because of the money they made off the back of it, and pharmaceutical companies as well. But we talked about Bill Gates, we talked about others involved in this, and some of the heads of countries, member states as well. There is an agenda behind it, which is the big word, and we've mentioned it before, and it's depopulation.
Yeah. I mean, Bill Gates actually talks on a show, And I'd like to play that now. But he actually states that he would like to lower population through the vaccine rollout by 10 to 15%.
Okay.
That is frightening.
Let's just watch this video right now.
Taking things that are, genetically modified organisms, and we're injecting them in little kids' arms. We just shoot them right into the vein. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. New vaccines. We could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
Well, there you have it, folks. I wonder what you think about that. Don't forget, you can leave comments as well. And as we're live tonight, you can leave comments and questions as well. And we'd like to hear from you as well. Jojo, we've often asked on this podcast, what is the purpose and the reason behind depopulation?
According to the World Health Organization, we have the positive perspectives, which is a reduced resource consumption. A smaller population could lead to lower demand for resources like water, energy, materials, potentially easing pressure on ecosystems. Okay, then we have environmental benefits like lower fertility rates. That's quite concerning under environmental benefits, lower fertility rates. Okay, so I have something to say about that as well. That is like Bovaer. So Bovaer in the cows, that is also reducing fertility in the cows. And so actually, I'm wondering if that infiltrates, and some of the farmers have been saying that it's actually been quite dangerous. But if they're putting that additive in, is that the same additive that they're putting into our vaccines and in our food? Yeah. So then we have the increased per capita income. Some studies suggest that population decline can lead to an increase in per capita income as resources become more readily available, and potential for degrowth and equality. So it's a shift away from a growth-based economic model and towards a more equitable distribution of resources that might be facilitated by population decline.
So what they're saying is less people, less strain on government and resources, the economy, our food chain supply, Clark, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, basic maths will say, like, if you have £100 and you split it between 50 people, everyone gets £2. If you have £100 split it between 25 people, you'll get £4. So it's, you can see the basic maths and where they're coming from. But there is a real danger in all of this, in that they are only proposing the benefits. They're only giving one side of the argument, which is very altruistic. There's a number of things that stand out. You flagged it, the birth rate. I mean, why? Yeah, they're trying to control the birth rates, but they're trying to do it via vaccinations. And surely, if you're vaccinating people, you're actually making them healthier, which means that they will live longer. Yeah. So none of it adds up to me.
Yeah.
What was that quote you had the other day about the ingredients? I remember you quoted something about the chef. What was that? It was something along the lines of, the chef knows the ingredients.
Yeah, a chef has to know all of the ingredients going into the food in case people have allergies. Yeah. Yet doctors do not know, or should know, what's in their ingredients of the vaccines and their medication, but they don't.
No, and the whole idea of the W.H.O is trial. So it's trial and error. So basically, we're going to try this vaccine. Let's see if it works. I've always had an issue with that when they call them GPs, general practitioners, because what they do is they practice on you. Yeah. They say, take these. If they don't work, come back. I'm like, doctor, you're supposed to know if they're going to work.
Exactly.
I'm not a guinea pig, Yeah,
I know. So then I've looked at, is depopulation a concern? Okay, so on the plus side, we have a plus and a negative. So shrinking populations mean reduced pollution and congestion.
Well, okay. Which is a good point there. During the lockdown, if you remember that beautiful summer, or I say summer, it was in March actually. The sun was
first one. Yeah.
Less pollution, less, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I suppose that is an
argument. Less cloud
So,
seeding.
yeah, of course, we know about chemtrails. That's for another show, another time, by the way, because that's going to be very, very deep. Anyway, so what were the positives as well?
So, but we're saying population, well, there wasn't really that many, and new opportunities for technological change or societal transformation. Population clearly poses significant challenges, which means fewer people, fewer workers to pay taxes and support retirees.
Yeah, it's true, because, I mean, all this is going to be paid for, Clark, isn't it? So where's the money coming from? I mean, who's funding it? And we've looked at Bill Gates, many other philanthropists as well are involved in this, obviously. It is all about control, which we keep on about, but the whole thing is about depopulation, and it's not just through health. You mentioned, via the food that we eat and things like that. People don't do their research. They don't look into it far enough because they think they're going down a rabbit hole.
I think it's very difficult to do the research, though. We tried last night to look up a lot of details, and as soon as you start looking, you get certain narratives put out there for you. It's very, very planned. It's very, very difficult to look behind the actual information that they're putting, make it look very altruistic. When you look at digital IDs, like we did the other day, it's all you get is the positives. You don't see the alternatives. And I think with all of this, it has to be questioned, because the control and depopulation it really impacts us as a sovereign nation. The money. Now, America isn't funding it. Yeah. There's a huge amount of money.
That's a massive loss.
But Joe Biden was given $958 million, I think it was, to the WHO. That's gone. And we're still giving £310 million a year, which I find absolutely absurd and absolutely ridiculous.
So that comes out of our taxes, yes?
Yeah.
So out of our taxes, it goes straight into the WHO.
Yeah.
The WHO. And then we've got, I think we're 5th on the list, right? But then you've got the Bill and Melinda Gates, and then you've got the
Gavi.
Yeah, they as a collective are still Bill Gates.
Yeah,
pretty much, yes.
Yeah,
but it's interesting. The CEO as well of the Gates Foundation was awarded in 2005 an entrepreneurial award by guess who? Klaus Schwab. That's interesting, isn't it?
That is very interesting.
That's my bit of research.
Wow, thank you, Richie.
So they're all interconnected, and it is to do with this depopulation. So there's less, strain on resources, and fewer people. It's easier to control. Now, what we want to talk about, I think, as well, is why are they doing it? We've discussed some of that already, but how are they going about doing it, and who else is involved in it? I mean, is Keir Starmer involved in all of this as well?
I think anyone that is part of the WEF and the Global Leader Programme, I think they're all intrinsically linked. I think it's very, very clear that when they go to Davos, these are the things that they're talking about. And it does come back to that sovereignty. We had a discussion last night when we were talking about this, and this question you posed, Jojo, in that, well, why are they able to do this? And unfortunately, it's because the government claim a mandate on to speak on our behalf, because they are the people in power. And when we vote, we've got to be very careful when we vote, because we are giving people to the ability to go on that world stage and negotiate on our behalf in what they believe to be our best interest.
The problem is, if we vote and you have a manifesto that states this, and this, why are we not holding them accountable to when their manifesto has been completely deferred from?
The argument for that will be is when you next go to the ballot box. That's when you hold them to account. But this is
5 years too late.
Exactly.
Well, you'd have to have 25 million people. If you can rally that many people to put pressure on the Crown, because the Crown still has the power to dissolve Parliament, right? But I mean, I don't think in my time, certainly not in my time, but it's never happened. But I can't see King Charles dissolving Parliament. When you consider the voter turnout in the last election was just under or just over 25, around about the 25 million mark. So it's not going to happen.
So 25 million to go and put a petition, towards the...
Well, we're coming to petitions. I mean, we looked at this, didn't we? There is a petition out there.
There is, but there's not enough numbers.
There was 156,000 signed this petition. And this petition really is asking us not to sign up to the WHO treaty that is going to be finalised on the 9th of July. But we would argue, if you're from Landers Hinson, as they all agree, that this should be put back to the people, like we did in Brexit.
Absolutely.
We should hold a referendum. It should be, the people who are paying £310 million in their taxes, us as a sovereign nation, which we believe we should be out of the ECHR, by the way, we should have the democratic right to call for a referendum, to pressure on the government, to call a referendum and ask the people of this country, do you think we should be part of the WHO?
I think it really does hit on the sovereignty of our nation, and that means that the nation really should have a say. And I go back to that great esteemed politician Tony Benn, and his quotes on power is, "What power have you got? Where did you get it from? in whose interests do you exercise it, to whom are you accountable, and how can we get rid of you? And that goes back to what we were saying about being held to account. We can hold our government to account for their actions and their behaviours and what they're doing by the ballot box. Yes, we might have to wait. We might have to petition the monarch to be able to do that. But how do we apply that to these people in the United Nations and the World Health Organization? How do the British people turn around and say, hang on a minute, I don't want you controlling our borders. I don't want you putting mandates that I have to be vaccinated so as I can go to work.
Do you think the Trump approach is good?
I think it's brilliant. I think I love Trump, and a lot of people will boo me for that, but I don't care. Trump is amazing, and he is now standing up for his people. He's standing up for his country. He's kind of looking at where his money's going. Is it invested properly? Is it what do we need to do? And the truth is, he's making a stand, and he's been a rebel with a good cause, actually. And I love that about him. Whereas we've got, Keir Starmer, who's part of the big boy club, I'm afraid.
He is indeed. And you consider what Trump has done. He's pulled out of the Paris Agreement and the Climate Paris Agreement. He's pulled out of the W.H.O. Of course, there's ongoing discussions because Elon Musk is quite influential in the White House as well with Doge and stuff. And of course, he's looking at the waste of money, the WHO. That's one of the other reasons why Trump pulled out, because they're like, what are we getting for our money? When they themselves were producing vaccines themselves at the time, and they were saying, why are we spending all this money on research when we can do it, in-house? And I think the key thing is with Trump, he is for his people. Clearly, our government, I say our government, I didn't vote for them, but this government clearly don't appear to be standing up for us as citizens.
I think it really challenges us when we look at how our government is behaving and whether they are acting in our best interests. I think we've seen this investment that Ed Miliband keeps going to the magic money tree that is the British people for all this, net zero projects that they're pushing. We're not seeing any benefit from that. We're not seeing energy prices come down.
Exactly, it's the same.
Yeah, I mean, where are the jobs in that green energy field that's coming from it? But the reducing PIT payments for people, the vulnerable, because they say we can't afford it. Everything that the government is doing at the moment is very, very hard to see how it's actually benefiting us, because everything that they're coming out with seems to be hurting the people the most. And quite often it's the most vulnerable in society that are being impacted by the actions of our government.
I'm talking about mad Ed Miliband. I mean, remember that he put a promo out there. The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. I mean, he's blowing it out of his arse, to be honest. Let's be quite honest about it, because he's talking a load of shit. He really is. I mean, the net zero, fanatics are absolutely crazy, because it's having more detrimental effect to us as people than anything else. It's absolutely berserk. You've got Just Stop Oil. You've got all these kind of groups out there. They don't realise the impact. And none of those people are coming from wealthy, middle class families. They're not working class people. We're going to stop the oil. No, you won't stop the oil. But we need oil.
Did not Jojo say something there about that's one of the things, the benefits that they're proposing is ecological benefits? Yeah. Reducing.
I want to push back on that PV thing you mentioned. I know it's probably a bigger subject for another time, because we're in a rural community. You live in a rural community, and you've been doing some investigative work. You've been speaking to some farmers as well, actually, about this, and we're going to be speaking to them hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But what's that all about? What are they trying to do? You've mentioned a little bit. Can you give us a bit more detail, Jojo, on that?
So it's an additive that is trying to reduce the methane output. Right. And basically, Clark and I went round to see some farmers, and we decided that it was in our best interest to really understand what Bovaer was. And obviously, this additive is actually quite carcinogenic. It's quite frightening, because the farmers, when they have to give the additive into the cow's food, they have to wear gloves and masks, and they have to protect themselves because of how dangerous it is to our skin and to the eyes. It's a huge irritant. Some of the cows, so obviously this was a trial, where the trial's ended now, hasn't it?
Well, we don't know whether the trial's ended or not, because they haven't been open enough with us. But certainly the other countries have done it, and there is some, I would say, questionable scientific papers based upon what they found so far.
And has any of this been debated in Parliament?
I think one of the MPs went forward and stated that he was concerned.
That was Andrew Bridgen.
Yeah,
Andrew Bridgen. Big shout out to you, by the way, for your stand on vaccines. But yeah, he did some.
Yeah, but basically not really, because what they're saying is a trial at the moment, and so obviously they need the statistics. And but what we're hearing from is the farmers. So obviously the MPs and the government have totally done over the farmers. So the farmers are now coming forward and just saying it's killing my cows. They're bleeding and their fertility has reduced.
Especially in Denmark, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Denmark have been doing it for a lot longer, and the long-term effects of Bovaer is now coming to fruition on the herds. And that was the questions that were being asked here when it was first introduced. It was like, what are the long-term effects of it? The Bovaer goes into the feed, which then goes into the cow. It then ruminates within the cow. But it doesn't come. Apparently, it doesn't come out the other side.
But it does, because they've been hemorrhaging, they've been bleeding, their fertility's
the fields, the rain was washing on the fields.
Yeah. So then, when we contacted the Soil Association, because we were asking about organic and then obviously Bovaer fed, well, if there is a plot here with Bovaer fed, and then the Soil Association, we asked the question if here this is supposed to be organic. There's a huge crossover, and so that's within our food. So then obviously, what my concern has been is the butter, so from the milk, the butter, but then...
Is it predominantly dairy products?
Totally, but no, it then extends further than that, because then we've got whomever, so it was Tesco, Sainsbury's...
And basically Arla. It was Arla and Muller and some of the big, huge DS dairies out in Europe. They're all doing it. And again, they're getting funding from the W.H.O and United Nations climate goals for this. And so they're getting all this funding. They're putting it into mainly these huge conglomerate dairy farms. But though the frightening thing that we found out was that these dairy farms supply some of these massive, large corporations like Nestle, like Heinz, like all those.
So it's in your baked beans. It's in all of the jars of like curry. It's whatever you buy.
Cheese. The amount of cheese.
The question I think I'd like to ask is what impact would that have on human beings, on us, isn't it? Because obviously it's in the food chain. And, most people don't pick up a packet and read. By the way, I mean, the lettering on the back of some of the packaging, you need a magnifying glass to see them the best of times.
That's your age, love. That's your age.
I think it's deliberate. But nevertheless, what is the impact on humans? So if we, these additives that have been added or injected or whatever they do it into cows and whatever else, because I'm kind of new to all this part of it, how does it affect us as a human population?
So at the moment, again, because it's being trialled, we're not entirely sure. But again, the whole agenda is to lower fertility. And actually, that's what is sort of seeping through. And we're starting to see that. But then a lot of people have been vaccinated. And then that was also to reduce, fertility, again, which is part of the agenda, isn't it?
Yeah. I think the dangerous thing is that we don't know. That's the thing, is we don't know. But we come back to, and the standpoint that we took on this is, hang on a minute. Surely it's better to have a natural product with less additives, with less bits added into it, whether that's through the feed or in the manufacturing process. You're better off having more natural ingredients. And it's something that we've been doing. We've been buying milk from direct from farmers, and the quality is so much better.
Yeah.
It really, really is. And it's got to be more beneficial to have natural products and organic products. And look, I am not an eco warrior in any way, shape, or form. Right? I'm
You're not a tree hugger.
No, I love nature. I love trees. I love it. But I'm not like Swampy and the guys that went out there. God bless them. But it really is, to me, it's about making sure that we know what we're eating and what's going into our bodies and our children's bodies as well.
You've got to imagine, if you're having to wear like pretty much a hazmat suit to actually put the additive into the food, what the is it going to be doing to our body?
How can it be good?
How can it be good for us? It cannot be good for us, because if you can't breathe it in, you can't get it in your eyes, you can't get it on your skin. My God.
Can I just say as well that one of the big fears for me is we mentioned it before, so go back and look at our other videos as well on YouTube. But I think it's that how is this going to develop in the future? It's all very well having these powers now for a problem now, but how are they going to use them in the future? We've touched upon it in other legislation and things that have gone on, the digital ID, the control that they're going to be able to exercise. How are they going to use it in 10 years' time, 15 years' time, 20 years' time? And I think that's the bit that really scares me.
And if I was a listener, I'd be sat there saying, hang on a minute. So what can we do about it, Clark? Bearing in mind, if a gathering of people come together and sort of start to ask their MP for help, what can an MP really do? And if we sign a petition, what does a petition really do?
I think the power of a petition is that it gives a sentiment of the country. So when there's sufficient enough people, again, going out there and saying, I'm going to put my name on this petition, when we see it reach 100,000, it gets debated in Parliament. That's actually quite a lot of people that turn around and go, do you know what? I want something done about this. And it covers pretty much the whole of the country. So there's a lot of people all over the country feeling the same. But the most important thing is to go to your MP, because the MP is your representative in Parliament. But there has to be sufficient numbers within that constituency. That MP wants to be going back for a second term. They're on the gravy train. They get, the amount of pension that they're going to get from serving 2 terms in office is huge. They like to have the power over the people. They like the kudos of being an MP. So they want to stay there. So if they think that that is at risk, they will then do something about it. So I would urge everyone to gather their friends together, talk about this. And if you feel the same, come together and write to your MP. Go and meet your MP and say, this is how we feel.
People word it to present it to their MP.
They will say, we've heard about this World Health Organization treaty. We don't like it. We feel that there is a risk of sovereignty. We think it's going to change it's going to change the way that we're governed and control over us. And if there's sufficient enough people within that constituency that puts the pressure on that MP who starts thinking, hang on a minute, my majority isn't that big here. If I need to represent these people, I need to represent their views. And if I don't represent their views, I'm not going to get voted in. That MP will then be sitting, if it's a Labour MP, they'll be sitting within the Parliamentary Labour Party, and they'll be turning around and other MPs will be saying, yeah, do you know what? My constituents are feeling the same way about it. They will then be putting the pressure on the leadership, the Lammies, the Starmers, the Rachel from accounts, and saying, we need to listen to the people here because I'm going to lose my seat.
Yeah, I think it's important, Giorgio, because Clark's right. If you remember the pressure that we were talking about, the councillor, the Labour councillor, Jacob Williamson.
Yep.
I mean, just, through X, we had some conversation backwards and forwards. We showed our support for his stance against Keir Starmer's broken pledges and promises. And of course, he's now an independent.
Yep.
So, people pressure, power does work. We've seen it in Brexit. We've seen that happen. So it can work, and people need to use their voices as much as possible and write to their MPs. And as Clark said, go and visit them as well.
Can we write a template?
Yeah, I think
of something that we could put together for people to go, because some people could find it a bit confusing.
So all of this stuff then, we talk about prepare and, the W.H.O, their plan for future lockdowns, pre-prepared pandemics and stuff like that, or the plandemic as we
like to call it.
Actually wasn't it? The impact it's had though, Giorgio, you've talked about what the lockdowns had, and what percentage of people within the care industry, for example, were against some of this stuff?
Actually, 6% of the healthcare voted against the mandatory vaccines in the UK.
And I remember that time where you couldn't go to the cinema, you couldn't go it's more than 6 miles, you couldn't go on holiday. Yeah. Then they done away with that, Clark, didn't they? They said, well, it's kind of waning now, the virus, so now you just have to do a test which you've got to pay for. I think I flew somewhere, I think it was Greece, I had to pay £15 for a test before I left. I got to the airport, did another at the airport, I landed the other side. So everyone who was on the plane was either done the test or been vaccinated. When we landed, I had to pay another €15 to be tested again. I mean, it was one big money-making scam, if you ask me, Clark.
Someone had a lot of skin in the game, didn't they?
They surely did. So we're going to wrap this up in a few moments, but we'd love to hear from you and what you think as well. But I think I want to hear your final conclusions from both of you, and I'll give mine, on why people should be speaking up against this proposal by the WHO, this treaty, this pandemic preparedness treaty that they've come together with, these 194 nations, and why we should pull out of it, Giorgio.
So can I just say, this is one of the reasons the WHO are trying to say that no alcohol is safe. So if that is like one of their tandems in trying to control us, every single part of this is going to be full control. Okay?
So it's all about control.
It's all about control, and it's all about
No going to meet your friends at the pub for a quick pint and a chat.
because no alcohol is safe. But then they're giving you a vaccine that will kill you. They're giving you a vaccine that will cause massive health implications. And there have been many, many studies about that, which actually are showing, unfortunately, the death rate. And so I don't trust them.
I think, Clark, your thoughts?
I think for me, it's about sovereignty. It's about us as a nation having control over the decisions that impact us as the people. We're paying taxes to the government. We should be able to have a say and hold our representatives to account. If we don't like them, we can get rid of them.
I would like a government that takes the Donald Trump approach with executive powers, which we don't have because of parliamentary kind of procedure, isn't it? To be able to say, we're coming out of there, we're no longer part of that, like we did with Brexit, which obviously Labour fought against. Keir Starmer was a Remainer. But to have those powers, they can be misused as well, which is a concern, isn't it? Because we've seen how with dictators. But I like what America's doing right now. I like what Donald Trump is doing right now. I think he's changing the country for the better of his own people, and that needs to happen here. But I'm afraid that under this incumbent government and Keir Starmer's leadership, it's not happening.